Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're specifically going to talk about one element, one aspect of the very sharp rise and the very sharp fall of Gary Gygax within the Dungeons & Dragons power sphere, okay, between 1973 and 1986. In 1973, Gary Gygax funded Dungeons & Dragons. In 1986, he resigned from Dungeons & Dragons. He was out as president. He was out as CEO of TSR, and his power, his real power over Dungeons & Dragons was done, okay? Over specifically the business aspects of Dungeons & Dragons, and frankly, in many ways, over the creative aspects of Dungeons & Dragons, right? He was really finished. So let's talk about this. So what I want to talk about today is the idea of why did Gary Gygax take 13 years to fall out of power in the very game that he created? And I have a theory for it. All right, so what did Gary Gygax achieve and what did he fail to do between 1973 and 1986? All right, so what he succeeded at, in my opinion, Gary Gygax achieved one of the greatest innovations in American invention in 1973, specifically in 1974. Dungeons & Dragons was printed for the first time in January 1974, and when that happened, the creation of Dungeons & Dragons, the first printing of Dungeons & Dragons, being available to the public, what did he achieve? Well, it's one of the greatest innovations, one of the greatest inventions of any American inventor, right? So what did he invent? Well, he invented the entire genre of tabletop role-playing games. Really never existed before. It's, no one really contests that Gary Gygax created tabletop role-playing games, right? He is the creator of tabletop role-playing games. So with that, there is some contention about if other people had what percentage part did others have, but nobody contends that without D&D, tabletop role-playing games probably wouldn't exist today, right? I think, well, actually, I guess some people contend that, but he's absolutely preeminent, and he's vital to the creation, the invention of tabletop role-playing games, which is a key American invention, okay? All right, so basically he achieves that. It's a huge achievement. It can never be understated, and I'm underlining that because we're about to talk about what he failed at. What did Gary Gygax fail at, and what led to him losing control of the game he created? This is my opinion going forward. Here we go. All right. I believe he failed in two ways. One, he failed to control his ego and his pride. He failed to control his pride. I think he was very proud of what he had created. I think he had a sense of what he had created. I think he had an understanding of its momentum. I think he had an understanding of how it would change the world. And that pride went to his head. Okay? And when that pride went to his head, he then made his second fatal mistake as far as retaining control of Dungeons & Dragons. And that was he failed in socialization. Okay? So if you're going to accomplish something, there's always three things in the mix, okay? Every Sunday, I do the slides for my church, right? And so everybody sings the hymns, and then we click on the slides on PowerPoint, and all the lyrics are there for people, right? There's three things involved. The person, I have to be there for that to work. The tools, the computer has to be there. The projector has to be there. The process, I have to turn on the computer before the monitors. It doesn't work if you do it the other way around, okay? So there is process in there, and the process has to be right. There is people there. The people has to be right. I have to arrive on time. I have to be alert and ready, right? And then there are the tools, right? And here's the thing, like so many great creators, people don't understand that it takes those three things. It takes process, it takes tools, and it takes people to make something happen. And Gary Gygax thought that he could pay attention to the tools. He paid a lot of attention to Dungeons & Dragons rules. That was the tool, right? The product was the tool. He paid a little bit of attention to process, and I think he paid very, very, very poor attention to the people. Gary Gygax, in 13 years, alienated every key person that he needed to control Dungeons & Dragons. First thing he did was he alienated Dave Arneson, okay? who helped him create Dungeons and Dragons to some extent. Was it 1%? Was it 51%? Who knows? There's a lot of debate about that. But we do know for a fact that Gary Gygax alienated him very quickly. Here we go. Here's his second one. Brian Bloom. When Dungeons and Dragons was funded, it was the initial funding of the very first printing of Dungeons and Dragons was $4,000. Gary Gygax put up $4,000. You know how much Dave Arneson put up? Nothing. All right? It's important to remember that. Don Kay put up $1,000, and Brian Bloom put up $2,000. Dungeons and Dragons does not exist without Brian Bloom, right? Gary Gygax alienated Brian Bloom probably within 3 to 4 years after he created Dungeons and Dragons with him, right? And they had a very contentious relationship all the way up until 1985, when all the way up until 1985, when Brian Bloom would exit Dungeons and Dragons and TSR forever. Okay, then so you have all that going on, right? And then finally, in 1985, Gary Gygax realized that things were going real south, right? And that he had alienated the person he created a game with. He had alienated the person who put up more money than anybody else to build the game. And then finally, in 1985, in an attempt to save it, he hired Lorraine Williams to be the TSR company manager, and he immediately alienated her, right? And she actually sided with the Bloom brothers, bought their stock, and then essentially set up a situation where Gary Gygax believed it was untenable for him to continue to work there, right? So in the road to the fall of Gary Gygax, it is my opinion, it was his pride, and it was his failure at socialization, and really realizing that people are as important as the tools, they're important as the process, they're a third of getting anything real finished, right? And that's, I think, why Gary Gygax failed to retain control of Dungeons & Dragons. What do you think? Do you think I'm right about that? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think there are other factors? Love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.